Wait, all yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for attending. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for someone maybe. Today, I'm gonna be giving you an introduction to Management 3.0, which is for me a really interesting way to manage organizations. It's more humane approach, putting people in the center of every process and activity. So for me, it's common sense, but still sometimes there are organizations that do not apply any of these techniques or practices and still working on a different mindset. So without any further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to be, again, talking about Management 3.0, and later I'm going to be talking specifically about the feedback wrap, which I think it's something that we all can profit from. Okay, so I'm going to give you a quick introduction of different type of management styles. So most probably we all know, and we read a lot about the evolution of management and Management 1.0. Basically, that comes from that started in the US in the early 20th century during the Second Industrial Revolution, when it actually was the first time that mankind had to face real mass production. Most organizations started to organize and establish the purpose and content in actually in a top-down cascading down the purpose and content to the organization, and used to be designed and managed from the top down. And in this context, people had to adapt to organizations. And interestingly enough, it's most of the practice still being used today. Have been created in the early 1900s, and even though the environment has changed dramatically, these practices have not really evolved. In this style of management, organizations are sought as moving parts, and the improvement of these whole requires monitoring, repairing, and replacing parts. And employees are considered as part of these moving mechanism. Sometimes we think that treating employees like adult human beings might be common sense, but sometimes it's not really common practice. Okay. In Management 2.0, it's an evolution for sure. Everyone recognizes that the people are the most valuable asset, and that the recognized managers had to do a change and become servant leaders, moving from our organizations from good to great. But the downside of this is that sadly, managers we often use the wrong approach. So they understand that the improvement of an organization is not achieved by the improvement of the parts, but at the same time, they still stick to hierarchy and have the tendency to forget that humans, usually we do not respond well to top-down controls. Again, this was certainly a good progress and help organizations move from Management 1.0, sorry. And Management 2.0 is actually trying to do the right thing, but sometimes do it with the wrong way, because there's management is still stuck with the hierarchical view of organizations. Certainly introduced practices that helped a lot, but sometimes they're carried out in the wrong way. Some of those practices, like one-on-one meetings, which I think they are great. Usually managers, when they do them, think that still think that they need to manage the people and not the system around the people. So this only reinforces the fact that there is a relationship between superior and subordinate, which is typical in the command and control organizations. Feedback 360 in this practice, which is, it only allows managers to know more about the employees and employees know about each other. And this only emphasizes that managers seem to be more important than non-managers. Balanced scorecards are as shown on screen. In this case, goals and metrics can only be established from local interactions and not really as part of a top-down target setting framework, because they tend to lose meaning. In the total quality management, also when implemented, it tends to reinforce that these hierarchical models are consistent with the way most managers think. Management 3.0, as I said, it's something new that is changing the way organizations are managed. So as I said before, management 1.0 was doing the wrong thing. Management 2.0 is doing the right thing in the wrong way. And management 3.0, it's maybe too early to say, but at least is considering organizations as complex in adaptive systems, and that good management means taking care of the system instead of manipulating people. So how do we define a good practice? Basically, good practice is when it engages people and their interactions. It enables them to improve the system, and it helps bring value to clients. This is totally connected with the Agile Manifesto. And actually, when we think about organizations as social networks and self-organized system and not machines, it is a lot easier to understand their behavior. This was a paradigm shift that was not without consequences, but I think the important thing to re-emphasize is that the purpose now organizations need to relate to the environment of which they are part of. And the management needs to be primarily about people and their relationships, and that to foster creativity, organizations need to adapt to people instead. So it was about time to rethink the way organizations are managed, specifically because most of the tools being used again were created in the 1920s, and most of them created by people born in the 19th century. If we look back 50, 60 years, and the way organizations were managed, in so many cases, we see that the tools being used have been created by people that have long retired or even dead, but still is their view of management that is still driving the organizations. Management 3.0 came out first as the best-selling Agile management book by leadership guru Jürgen Appel. And then in 2016, the author released Managing for Happiness, which is really interesting. And it is actually all about actionable leadership. It's not another framework. It's a mindset combined with ever-changing collection of games, tools, and practices that can help any member of an organization manage the organization. So Management 3.0 actually follows the system thinking idea that 95% approximately, of course, is of the performance of an organization is a result of the entire system, not actually an individual. And it really examines the way that systems the system can find the right solution for better and effective leadership across the organization. So Management 3.0 is organized in a series of organizational views. Actually, this is Marty, which represents the way it is organized. It basically consists of 2 pillars and 6 organizational views. The 2 pillars are management and leadership. It actually explored the different ways of management, the one that we described before. And complexity thinking. So basically, it tells us that we can't actually control the complex system, but we have ways to maybe influence or guiding the system. Actually, this module deals with how we can deal with this increased complexity in a VUCA world. VUCA is an acronym that stands for volatile, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. In these kind of environments, we need to be creative and find tools and redefine what we know and how we do things constantly. So organizations are considered complex adaptive systems, and that consist of parts, people, and that form a system, the organization itself. And which shows the complex behavior while it keeps adapting to the environment. Okay, moving to one of the first organizational views is Energize People. And it is all about the importance of employee motivation. So, and in this part, I'm going to be doing some references to what we have today in Lenio and the things that we really need to profit from. And later, I'm going to be doing some references to personal experiences. So again, these in this organizational view is all about the importance of employee motivation. And basically, we cannot make people feel motivated or engaged, but it's all about setting the right conditions to maybe have better probability that that will happen, even though that success is not certain. But those leading people are responsible for making employees' engagement something that is built in the organization. The Management 3.0 offers a couple tools to help leaders or managers determine what really motivates a person. The Chamfrog is a model that deals with motivation in the work life. It consists of 10 motivators that are either intrinsic or extrinsic, of a little bit of both. Actually, the intrinsic motivators are those that had to do with fulfilling our basic desires. And extrinsic motivations, it's all about things like bonuses or payments. Kudo cards are just to say thanks. And happiness doors, for example, is just about giving feedback to giving direct feedback of maybe at a meeting. You can give your immediate feedback by posting something on the exit door. Of course, we being remote and distributed teams, it's hard to implement. But there are other practices that if we think we have one-on-ones on Lenio, then the style is to have a trustworthy space in which leaders and employees can openly discuss anything that might be affecting them in the work life or personal life. So it's a good practice. But we also have salary reviews, bonuses. We have budgets for training, budget for books, and I think one of the things that is working well is my Lenio recognitions, because we all have the tool to say thanks or to recognize others because of their doing a great work, or they maybe putting aside time to help when this is not really their responsibility. So there are a couple tools that are aligned with this organizational view. Moving on to the next one. So next organizational view is empower teams. Teams can self-organize, but this requires empowerment, authorization, and trust from management, which means that we need to have the tools, we need to have the support from the upper management, and of course, it needs to be trusted. People need to earn the trust, and leaders need to learn how to delegate. To maybe help in this case, the framework, the Management 3.0 offers a couple tools that like the delegation pokers and delegation boards. Those are intended to start delegating little by little, and maybe depending on the context, depending on the task, depending on the complexity, but those, that is an interesting tool to help determine up to what level we can delegate in a certain situation. Something that I like, it's from Gary Vaynerchuk. This is a LinkedIn guru. It's a quote from him that says something like, leaders work for reports, not the other way around. So leaders and managers need to think that they are actually working for their reports and not the other way around. Next organizational view is Align Constrains. So clear values can actually make great contribution to good behaviors and a better culture. The primary function is to nurture the organizational culture through values. So basically we can't, we need to work by example. And there is a huge difference between what we can think, or what companies or organizations can write down on a corporate letterhead or something like it, and the reality of the so-called company culture. So that is something that gets defined by the interactions, but there are ways to determine what is the culture of the organizations. There are a couple of questions that help determine that. For example, what do we care about? What do we want? What do we want to act? How do we want to act? Those questions help us determine where we want, or gives a framework. Even for self-organized teams, gives a framework that gives them the idea to what extent it can go. So the job of a leader is to cultivate those values, and by building a framework and put those values in practice with consistency and trustworthiness. And in this case, I think the Lenio talks are a great space to show what the company cares about or where we are going. And of course, the all hands in which we can openly discuss where the company is going. And of course, the openness of the partners, I think, is great, and helps really create a culture which is unique and it evolves and it's always moving, but at least gives us some framework. Next organizational view is competence development. So teams cannot achieve their goals if the team members are not capable enough. And the task here for managers and leaders is to contribute to the development of a competence. There are different ways to measure or to assess the competence in a business, but they usually don't account for the fact that the organizations are complex and so really complex social systems. Something that we all need to learn is that to be able to learn or to grow, we really need to be allowed to fail and feel safe to do it. We need to be able to test, try, and experiment, and that's the way to learn. In this case, at the, of course, the competence matrix and the feedback graph that we are going to be talking later is a good, good tools. And at Leño Labs, we have the access to Udemy, access to books, and to do proof of concepts. And I think the Matthias is doing a great job sharing frameworks and libraries, and maybe fostering people to test and to try and to share their findings. I think this is great. Something interesting that, at least for me, was made some noise at the beginning is that in the project that we are working on, they host some talks that actually call Learn from Failure. So, and at the beginning, it sounded like kind of weird, but it's actually true because the employees are allowed to test, to experiment, and to fail and feel safe if they do it, as long as we turn that into a learning experience. Okay, the next organizational view is growth structure. So most of the teams operate in the context of a complex organization, so it's really important to consider structures that enhance communications. Basically, we need to put networks over hierarchy. We operate in an ever-changing environment, which is important to change. So it is important to change the organizational structure regularly, or at least be prepared to change. This gives really a high level of adaptability to the organization. I think in this case, how we communicate using Slack, I think it's fundamental. The community practices, the linear talks, the one-on-one, and I think it's really important that the horizontal structure that at Leño gives us the flexibility to adapt to any coming changes. Of course, my Leño Teams is a great tool to shape the organization and redefine the way teams are organized. And finally, the last organizational view is improve everything. So we people, teams, and the organizations need to improve continuously to try to put off failure for as long as possible. Sometimes improvements means taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And sometimes we need to do gradual changes, and sometimes, some of the times, big changes. In the way it helps reach optimal performance and in an environment or a context that is ever changing, and to be able to adapt or to create better performing teams. They suggest to change in the environment frequently. including customers, maybe projects, maybe different aspects. And in this case, I think rotation plans or being available to change projects, change technologies. I think it's great. It's a great way to be ready for the future. Okay, so finally, feedback. Why it is important? Actually, it is it's a useful way to know where we are and where we want to be. So it allows us to really determine and identify areas for improvements. It also helps us and helps organizations reinforce behaviors, desired behaviors, and change those that maybe are not aligned with the company culture. And actually, we need to be clear when we give feedback, or at least most people appreciate those who can say things as they are and not really beat about the bushes. It doesn't mean that we really need to be harsh, but just means that we need to say what we mean and not force the other person to read between the lines. And if we do this, it keeps teams engaged, and to do it with the comments always need to be constructive, since they are key to developing the team competencies. Reason number 2 is because it fosters a sense of belonging. It always sends the right message when we receive or give feedback, and it is actually good to know that we are part, because if we get feedback, for me, it means that we are cared about and we are an important piece of the organization. Third reason is increases growth and happiness. We actually need to know where we are. As I said before, we really need to know where we are and where we want to be. And it's always good to hear nice things about our work. Next reason is because it unlocks change and the innovation. There will be no change or improvements if no feedback is provided. Before, as we said, that organizations need to adapt to people and to unleash the people's creativity. And the last and final reason is that prevents teams from getting blocked or disengaged. This is something that we all need, and we are all unique, and we are all in a never-ending learning path. And feedback sometimes can help us from getting into a state in which we are no longer productive. So the praise sandwich or feedback sandwich is the technique that used to many of us maybe heard about or even received this kind of feedback. Is the practice that involves giving something that maybe is not so positive between two compliments. This technique not usually works. It may sometimes work with novice employees because they may feel insecure, and this approach gives them too positive inputs. But on the other hand, more experienced resources may dislike this practice, since usually expect constructive feedback and may not like the noise caused by these two insincere compliments. So the feedback wrap. So this is where we wanted to get. And this is a practice that has to do with the competence development. in this management 3.0 practice addresses the challenge many of us we are trying to overcome with teams today. And the thing is how to give actionable feedback, the kind that leads to positive and self-motivated actions. And and not to teammates that may not feel so valued or may feel that this is a reason for them to worry about or concern. So the feedback needs to be proper and timely. And so the feedback wrap is a part of the entire trust environment, and needs to be it is an essential and transparent feature of the how organizations work. It really helps people from both personal improvement and systematic improvements. And the recipe for the feedback is, first, we need to give a context. We need to start by offering context to increase the other person's understanding and appreciation of the situation. This is hypothetical, and for example, in a case that we need to say something or at least give feedback to someone, we need to establish clearly where this is coming from. The next step is to give or to share our observations without, of course, pointing fingers. But we need to be specific on examples and instances. I think this is the hardest part because it has to do with emotions. But we really need to know how you feel, or we need to let the other person know how we feel about the facts and create awareness of the impact those facts on us without blaming anyone. So we don't have to point fingers, but I think that this is the hardest part. The next is we really need to explain our needs, and because the receiver may not realize what is important to us. And because we usually expect people to know what we need or what we want without saying, and this is doomed to fail. And finally, we need to wrap it up with suggestions. We need to allow the person to figure out what needs to be done to close the gap between the needs and facts. And we can always offer some suggestions, one or two things to move things forward. So basically, next, this is the feedback wrap. It usually works better compared on my own personal experience and likeness. Usually works better than the sandwich, since it does not distinguish between positive and negative feedback. There is just feedback, facts, and feelings. It is good to let people know what we notice and how we feel about that. Both facts and feelings can be either positive or negative, but doesn't really matter, because we only thing that matters is that we make the other person aware of the impact of their actions. And we as managers, we can use these 5 simple steps to of the feedback wrap to give anyone in our organization respectful, constructive feedback. And that's basically what this is all about. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I said before that I was going to share my experience throughout all my career. I always receive the feedback sandwich, and was never or very a few occasions in which I got really positive constructive feedback that allowed me to change behaviors or develop some skills, and was really frustrating for me over time. And because I think it sends a contradictory message, because if it's not done properly, you may end up with a feeling that everything is okay, but it actually my manager or my person I work with at the moment was not clear enough, or expecting me to read between the lines, and maybe I misinterpret, and that was not maybe allowing me to move forward or to growth or to change behaviors or reinforce desired behaviors. So again, for me, I think it's better to clearly say what we want without being harsh. If we are respectful, we can share our how we feel in different situations and see what the other person has to say, and work together on finding the solution to maybe get into a common ground and change what we think is wrong, but we make it clear, and we set up actionable items. So again, thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions or anything you want to review, I'm open for questions.
Great talk, Sergio. What are our questions for Sergio? Who goes first?
What is the question again?
What are the questions for you? So
I have a question if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Sergio, at the beginning of the talk, you have a sentence that I really like, that we should manage tools and not people. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure. I mean, can you expand a little bit, because managing tools, I don't know if we have a lot of tools in managing. Maybe, don't you think we can create an environment where tooling is too much, too structured, to get in the middle, maybe, basically?
Yeah, basically that's the way to maybe put people in the center, instead of putting processes and tools and all the rest in the center. So we need to focus on maybe adapting the organization and making it more flexible and to respond quickly, rather than expecting or controlling people. So that's basically what it is all about. Not really necessary. Again, I think it is this fact that Management 3.0 puts people in the center of everything, and they state that they need to be self-organized, is a way to maybe giving people space to determine the way they want to interact, the way they want to do things. Of course, the culture is important to set a framework or a limit to what they're allowed to do, but I think that's what it intends for. Give people space to determine how they want to interact, collaborate, and work, and set limits by setting the culture, and then control the other aspect of the organization, but not the people. Basically give people space to determine
the difficult part, I suppose, the control. Mm-hmm. I mean, every one of us like to organize ourselves like we want, but we need to make sure that work is actually done and done the way.
Correct. And that's where the culture is really important, because we set criterion as to what is allowed and what is not, what is a good behavior and what's not. But basically that's the case.
Sure, I totally agree with you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sergio, I have two questions. Sorry for the background noise. So the first one is about the where we are in this like new management phase, like the 3.0 phase, where you think we are as a whole, from all the, like the organizations parts, the employees, the people, companies. Like, I mean, where you think we are on this new
In
phase?
general or lately?
Actually, I was thinking like in general, but we can put it on Lenio if you think. If you want, I don't want to put you in a awkward position, but it's a good question actually.
Yeah. From my point of view, this is new, and companies are struggling to implement ways to empower people and leave management 2.0 behind. We still think there are still today organizations with a management 1.0 mindset. So there is a lot being done in this area, but there are still organizations that are still working with management 2.0. I think we are far away from being in this kind of state, but again, this is something that we all need to consider, because changes are coming, and with the new way to connect to work, and with younger people joining organizations, they have different values. It's not to blame, but it's actually a thing that companies and organizations need to account for. They will have to make the necessary adjustment to deal with different ways to establish relationship between the team members or the organization, the members of an organization, different levels of commitments, or different way to that people see the work, or what they are willing to do, or up to what extent they are willing to go. So I think we are in general, we are making progress, and but it's difficult for me, and I think it will be difficult for big companies to adjust to this way of management or running organizations, because it's difficult for a big company with maybe a hierarchical structure already to change. But even though there are changes, there are examples of the digital transformation even in industries that I never thought possible. In the banking industry, which is really traditional way to do things, and are a successful example of digital transformation in introducing ways to do things in a more flexible way, and adjust to the new way to do things. For example, in Banco Galicia, they made a huge transformation to adjust to introduce new methods and organize in a different way. Banco Francés, which is also a huge organization, they reorganized everything, changed the way they organize the different areas from everything, not just IT, even from the platform or people in customer service, and it's everything aligned in a way that is everything connected to delivering value to clients. So change is coming, and there are some companies that are making the necessary adjustment, and those that cannot evolve, they will struggle in the future to maybe cover positions or recruit people from the market, because actually this is something that will really important, even for myself, that I'm not a millennial. It's really important to see or to try to determine next time or considering an opportunity, how the organization works, how they function, what they think about the ways we relate to work. So it's Change is coming, and organizations that do not adapt will struggle in the near future. And as for Leño, I think it's in the right way. For me, it's a really good way to organize or to run things. We have all the tools, and actually that's from my personal opinion and advice for everyone on the call, that we really need to take all the things that are valuable on Leño and make the most of it, even for the one-on-ones. Try to all the learning opportunities, all the space to add value or to suggest, or so take the opportunity and try to make the most of it. It's not common in big companies. I spent almost 10 years working for the government, and 10 others working for big companies, and never seen the space to do the things we do at Leño Labs. Of course, there are others working at a different level, but I think it's Leño is on the right path.
Thanks for your answer, and thanks for all your comments about Leño Labs. And this wasn't prepared, just for the record.
Well, that was not rehearsed.
Yeah. But you mentioned something while you were putting your point here, and it was about the feedback, and you mentioned also that this is like a system, a people system. It's a whole. It's not only from the company side. So about the feedback group, how do you think companies can make this feedback group a two-side recipe instead of being only like the manager or the responsible for taking those or for providing feedback? How can we make it like a two-way or two-side recipe, including both parts and making them an active part of the feedback? I think that it's not a monologue. It should be something that it's a two-way conversation. So and we had a lot of personal conversation about this, but I like your perspective about this aspect.
Yeah, I think it's we don't have to take it as an example or these slides that you only the leader talks and the other person just listens. It can be a two-way street in which, for example, when we list the observations, the other person can maybe give some insight on where those why or what they might be related to. So this is not just a monologue, as you said. It can be a two-way street, and there can be an interaction. And maybe in this interaction, it can also change your observation or give more context to your observation. So I think the feedback wrap is not just something that kind of top down. It is a two-way street, and also can be something that we all can use to maybe bring up to management in this case. And I think the most important thing is that to take from this presentation is that we need to be clear. We need to state what we really mean and not expect the other person to read between the lines, because it may be getting the wrong message. So, and as long as we do everything with in an environment of respect, everything should be allowed, and something that we can discuss and interact and check together to find the best approach or the best action item to fix whatever, or to address whatever we are discussing about. So to your point, it is not just a monologue. It can be an interaction between a manager or a leader and a teammate. It can be an interaction, or it also can be requested by a teammate and provide their feedback to their manager or leader in this case. So
maybe
yes.
that is the more challenging point.
Yeah,
I
that's the
mean,
challenging part. Yeah, making both parts an active part on the feedback
Mhm.
wrap. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's the
Yeah.
challenge actually.
Yeah, but I think we have the right context at Lenyon Lab to do it. So we all need to, at least from my point of view, we all need to feel safe that we can bring up things, discuss in an open manner, really state what we think, and most certainly we'll find a way to address whatever we are feeling or we are seeing in the organization.
Excellent. Thank you, Sergio.
Mhm. No problem.
Do we have any other questions? If not, that is an amazing way to start the 2020 cycle.
Yeah,
Thanks
and
a lot.
anyone, if you want to read more, want to talk about this, and want to know more about, I'm not an expert, but we can always learn together. If you guys are interested in knowing more about Management 3.0 or want to discuss, feel free to contact me over Slack, or even we can create a new Slack channel.
that was a point. You mentioned some books and some resources.
Mm-hmm.
That's somewhere for us to reach that.
I can try to see if there is a way in the management30.com. There's a lot of information about this and all the practices and training opportunities. But I can try to see if the books are available for download. I don't think, but there might be somewhere. I can search for it and let you know, Fabio.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks a lot, Sergio. It was great. And thanks, everybody. And we see each other next week again.
Okay, thank you again for the time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.